You are 19 years old. It is 0340. You are asleep in a steel room 400 feet under the Pacific. And the object 2 feet from your face holds 647 pounds of high explosive. There are 36 more of them in here with you. This is not an emergency. This is Tuesday. And the strangest part is not that you sleep here. It is that you asked for it. So here is the question this file answers. Why does the United States Navy put its youngest sailors to bed inside the weapons magazine? And why do the men who have done it call those the best bunks on the boat? Everything that follows comes from ship's logs, Navy occupational health guidance, published survivor testimony, and the sworn record of one night in October 1944. Where the record disagrees with itself, this video will say so on screen. 3 things you are about to learn. Why the coldest, quietest air on a nuclear submarine is not for the crew. Why the fuel inside these weapons gives men headaches that have their own medical name. And why, on one American submarine, this exact room was the only one with a door to the surface. Start at the front of the boat and work backwards. A Los Angeles-class fast attack submarine is 362 feet long and 33 feet across at the widest point. Inside that pressure hull live 129 people. For patrols that can run 90 days without a port call, without sunlight, and without a single square foot of space that is not already doing 3 jobs. The first compartment you reach is the torpedo room. 4 tubes, 21 inches across, set into the forward bulkhead. Behind them, stowage for up to 37 weapons. The standard load is the Mark 48 ADCAP, 19 feet long, 3,695 pounds, with a 647-pound warhead. In 2022 dollars, a single one of them ran about 5.4 million. Do the arithmetic on the weight. 37 of those is roughly 68 tons of ordnance sitting in the bow. That is about the weight of a loaded semi-truck and its trailer, stacked into a room smaller than a 2-car garage. Now, find the beds. They are in the gaps. A submarine bunk is a steel pan roughly 6 feet long and 2.5 feet wide, with about 2 feet of air above your chest, before you meet the underside of the man above you. Under the mattress is a shallow storage tray that lifts on a hinge. Every sailor in the fleet calls it the same thing: a coffin locker. That is where your entire life goes for 90 days. 2 uniforms, a toothbrush, letters, and whatever else fits in a space about the size of a bathtub, 3 inches deep. The curtain across the opening is the only privacy on the ship. Not the only privacy in the room. The only privacy on the ship. Learn the rules of this world now, because one of them is going to break before the end of this file. Rule 1. Nothing in this room is decorative. Rule 2. Nothing is stowed loose, ever, because the boat will take steep angles without warning, and a loose object in a weapons room is a casualty waiting to happen. Rule 3, and hold on to this one. Directly above the bunks, set into the overhead of this compartment, there is a hatch. It is not a weapon, and it is not a bed. Remember it. There is no morning here. There is only your watch. The modern American submarine force runs its crews on a 24-hour cycle. But the day is still cut into watch sections, and the boat never sleeps as a whole. Roughly a third of the crew is on watch. A third is working or training. And a third is in a bunk. Rotate. Repeat. 90 days. Which brings us to the first thing nobody tells you about submarine berthing. There are not enough bunks. The practice is called hot racking. 2 sailors, sometimes 3, are assigned to a single bunk in shifts. When your relief takes the watch, you climb into a rack another man has just left. The mattress is still warm. That is where the name comes from. And it is not a figure of speech. The lowest ranking men hot rack first. On a fast attack boat, a new sailor who has not yet earned his dolphins is not a person with a bed. He is a person with permission to use one. And this is where the torpedo room comes in. The weapons in this compartment are precision machines with a monopropellant fuel load and sensitive electronics. They cannot be allowed to cook. So the torpedo room is climate controlled to a tighter standard than the spaces built for the crew. Read that again. The coldest, most stable air on a nuclear submarine is not maintained for the human beings. It is maintained for the ordnance. The men just happen to be sleeping in it. It is also, by a wide margin, the quietest berthing on the boat. It sits forward of the main crew traffic. No one is walking to the galley through here. No one is slamming a watertight door at 0200 on the way to the engine room. There is no television, no card game, no cue for the head. Ask any submariner where the good racks are, and you will get the same answer often enough that it stops being a joke. The weapons room. Cold, dark, quiet, and nobody bothers you. We open one file like this every week. Records, logs, testimony, and the details that did not make it into the official history. If that is the kind of thing you want showing up in your feed, the subscribe button is right there, and it costs you nothing but a second. Then come straight back, because the next part is the reason this room has a reputation. Flat and conversational beats enthusiastic every time on this one. Now the part every viewer is quietly wondering about, so let us take it head on. Hygiene. On a 90-day patrol, fresh water is made by the boat's own distilling plant, and it is rationed against the reactor plant's needs first. When the plant is struggling, the boat goes to water hours. Showers get shut down. Submariners have a name for the shower you take under those conditions, and it involves getting wet, shutting the water off, soaping down, and turning it back on for under 30 seconds. Some men go days. Laundry stops too. Which matters more than it sounds, because the air on a submarine is recycled, scrubbed, and rebreathed. Every smell in that hull stays in that hull. There is a phrase for what a boat smells like at the end of a long patrol. Sailors call it the smell of home, and they say it with a straight face. And every one of them says the same thing about coming back to port. Their families can smell the submarine on their clothes before they get to the car. But there is one problem in this compartment that is not about smell or water or space. It is about what is inside the weapons. The Mark 48 does not run on batteries. It runs on a liquid monopropellant called Auto Fuel 2. One fluid carrying both its own fuel and its own oxidizer, which is what lets a torpedo run a piston engine at 60 knots in an environment with no air. Auto Fuel 2 works. It is also, by the Navy's own occupational health guidance, a material that requires controlled handling, ventilation standards, and exposure monitoring, wherever it is stored or worked on, because of what it does to people. The primary component is a nitrate ester. Nitrate esters dilate blood vessels. In a human being, that produces a specific, throbbing, well-documented headache, and it is common enough among torpedo workers that it has an informal name in the fleet. They call it the auto fuel headache. Sit with that for a second. A 19-year-old machinist's mate, 400 feet down, sleeps 2 feet from a sealed weapon. The weapon is fine. The weapon is safe. The handling procedures exist and they work. And this is not a story about negligence. But the reason those procedures exist at all is that the substance in question is capable of putting a headache into the skull of a man who is standing near it. And he is not standing near it. He is sleeping under it for 90 days because there was nowhere else to put a bed. This is the trade the submarine force makes in one image. The most stable air on the ship, the quietest bunk on the ship, beside 68 tons of ordnance and a fuel with a headache named after it. Every submariner in that room has decided the trade is worth it. On the night of the 24th of October, 1944, that trade paid out in a way nobody had planned for. The submarine was USS Tang, Balau class, 311 feet. 87 men aboard Under Commander Richard O'Kane. Tang was on her 5th war patrol, and she was, by any measure the Navy kept, one of the most effective submarines it had ever put to sea. That night she was working a Japanese convoy in the Formosa Strait, on the surface, in the dark, at close range. By around 02:30 on the 25th, 23 of her 24 torpedoes were gone. O'Kane set up on a transport and fired the last one. Bosun's mate William Leibold was on the bridge beside him, watching the water. The torpedo broached. It cleared the surface, trailing light, and went back under. Then it turned left. Then it turned again. Leibold called it out. There goes that one. Erratic. It was a circular run. The weapon came back on the boat that fired it. 20 seconds. Tang was hit on the port side, aft. 3 compartments flooded immediately. Men on the bridge were thrown into the sea. The submarine went down in 180 feet of water and settled on the bottom. And here is where the room comes back. Below, in the dark, the survivors did the only thing available to them. They moved forward. Every man who could walk carried a man who could not. Through the boat, toward the bow, toward the one compartment on a fleet submarine that had a way out. The forward torpedo room. The hatch in the overhead of that compartment was an escape trunk. A small sealed chamber that could be flooded from the inside until the pressure matched the sea, so the outer hatch could be opened against it. The men who slept in the weapons room slept beneath the only door. Around 29 men reached that compartment alive. They could not go immediately. Japanese escorts were still overhead, dropping charges. The crew burned confidential documents. Then a fire started in the forward battery, and smoke began coming into the torpedo room. And the decision made itself. 4 at a time, they climbed into the trunk.
It's at our knees.
They flooded it to chest height.
Stay calm.
They fitted Momsen lungs, a rubber rebreather bag issued to every submariner, and practiced once in training and almost never again. They opened the hatch above their heads and went up through 180 feet of black water. It is the only known occasion in history when a Momsen lung was used to escape a sunken submarine in combat. Not everyone who entered the trunk reached the surface. Not everyone who reached the surface survived the hours in the water afterward. 9 men out of 87 were pulled from the sea the next morning by a Japanese frigate. They spent the rest of the war as prisoners. 78 did not come up. Commander Richard O'Kane was picked out of the water and held as a prisoner of war until 1945. He came home weighing less than 100 pounds. He received the Medal of Honor, retired as a Rear Admiral, and died in 1994. William Leibold survived the water, survived the camps, stayed in the Navy, and retired as a captain. He spent decades afterward speaking for the men who did not come back. And he lived into his 90s. And among the 78 lost aboard Tang was a young sailor named Darrell Dean Rector from Chapman, Kansas. 2 years earlier, aboard a different submarine, Rector had become briefly famous throughout the fleet as the man whose appendix was removed at sea by a pharmacist's mate with no surgical training, and bent spoons for retractors. He survived that. He was 22 when Tang went down. The accounting. Once. Slowly. 87 men aboard. 24 torpedoes carried. 23 fired. 1 came back. 180 feet to the surface. 29 men reached the escape compartment. 9 came home. 78 names on the memorial. Every Navy that has ever built a submarine has arrived at the same conclusion by a different route. On a boat, comfort is whatever is left over after the machine is served. The air is conditioned for the weapons. The bunks go wherever the weapons are not. The men fit into the gaps. And then, one night in 1944, the gap became the exit. The room that was never designed for sleeping was the only room designed for leaving. 9 men are the reason we know that. Their names belong in the record. That's why we keep it. The next file is on your screen now.